Good morning and welcome to Election 18. This is a new feature that you're seeing today. I'm Rosemary O'Hara. I'm the editorial page editor of the South Florida Sun Sentinel, and I'm proud to be joined today by my counterparts at the other major South Florida newspapers. This is Nancy Ankrum, the editorial page editor of the Miami Herald, and Rick Christie, my counterpart at the Palm Beach Post. Before elections, editorial boards often bring candidates in to talk to them about the issues, their campaigns, and why they're the best person in the race. And we're doing that again in the Florida governor's race. Today, we have a series of one-hour deep dive interview conversations with the candidates who hope to be the Democratic nominee for Florida governor. We extended a similar invitation to the candidates who want to be the Republican nominee for Florida governor, but they did not choose to come and participate. And we're sorry about that, because this is an opportunity for people to hear the candidates beyond the sound bites, to hear what people who care about the issues, know something about the issues, have to say. And so welcome. And now I want to get to our first guest, who I'm happy to see here today, former Miami Beach Mayor Philip Levine. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks for
happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, we're just going to jump in,
Sure.
And we want to talk about the issues, the state, the campaign, and then at the end, I'm just going to ask you to tell people why you're the person who's best suited to be the Democratic nominee. So I'm going to just start, and I'd like to start with, we've had 5 debates now, and I know the answers are rather truncated, the opportunity to answer. What is it that you wished you could have said last night that you didn't get to say?
Well, I think I said as much as I could, because what happens when you have 30 seconds and 45 seconds, it's pretty hard to talk in sound bites. And obviously, an hour with 5 candidates is very, very challenging. But I think that the bottom line is that, and what I hear when I'm out all across the state and truly around the country, is that people are looking for folks into leadership positions who don't talk as much about what they're going to do in the future, but more about what they've done. My background, as you know, is came from nothing. I built a business, then became a mayor. And in the private sector, we don't always ask people, what are you going to do? We kind of want to know what they've done. And usually when you know what someone's done, you'll know what they'll be capable of doing, or hopefully what they'll do, what's in their heart. It's hard to get that across, I think, in a debate, but we did the best we could.
Mm-hmm. Nancy?
Last night you talked about, briefly, your efforts to confront sea level rise on Miami Beach. And you do get credit for getting those pumps installed, for taking action, raising streets. However, the current administration seems as if it has been left with some cleanup, some doubts. The pumps have been said in a study to be polluting the bay. The raised streets are now flooding, and they are also flooding businesses that are no longer at street level. If you had to do this all over again, can you take a look at what might have gone wrong and how you might address it now?
Sure. Nancy, so let me say this. I inherited a city that was going underwater, where investors and residents were losing hope and confidence in the future of the city of Miami Beach. Some people get, I always say, swept into office. I kind of got floated into office in Miami Beach with a job that I needed to take care of. Now, we had a lot of questions. Did we have all the answers? No. When a mayor comes into a situation like that, there is no textbook that you can buy that says, if you're the mayor of a city that's experiencing sea level rise, turn to Chapter 5, Section 3, and that's your instruction. We had to write the book going along. So truly, I have to disagree with some of the things that you just said, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, we immediately put together a $500 million program to raise roads, put in pumps, raise the seawalls, and change our building codes. Now, did we do everything 100% right? No. Did we course correct along the way as we learned? Absolutely. But what people are looking for then and they're looking for now are not folks that study things to death and get caught up in analysis paralysis. They're looking for leaders that take action. Hey, admit when you're wrong, but course correct. I could tell you that it doesn't take that much study to understand what's going on. when you have the water at this level and the streets at this level, you're in good shape. But when all of a sudden the water's at this level and the streets are at this level, you're in bad shape. What do you need to do? Put the streets above the water. This doesn't require an Einstein level genius to understand that. The Urban Land Institute, one of the most prestigious organizations in the world, came in and did a study. And they came back and said what we were doing was correct. Matter of fact, they also said that it was courageous. They said it was brave. What ends up happening, Nancy, in any democracy, and thankfully we have a great democracy, is that you'll have people who don't want to have their roads raised. And you have folks that will play to the folks because a squeaky wheel gets the grease. And will tell you that you're doing it all wrong because they don't want to have their roads raised because whether they don't care or they don't believe that they'll be there long enough to enjoy it. But when you have a city and you got to do the right thing for the whole city, you got to take action and do it. Now, if I look back and say, what would we have done differently? I know what I would have done differently. I would have been even more aggressive. I would have been more impatient. Matter of fact, I knew that we needed generators faster, and we planned them. But unfortunately, it got caught up in bureaucracy. So when we had a weather event at the same time as a king tide, then of course you lose power and your pumps don't work. But once it happened, we made sure we course corrected and got the generators there. So to say we did everything 100% correct, no, I would absolutely say no. But I think that we did a majority correct, and we instilled a sense of confidence. And if I'm governor, I can tell you one thing, I'm going to make sure I do that statewide immediately.
If I can just follow up, but tell us one thing yet. I mean, so didn't get the generators fast enough.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like, I needed to move harder, faster. But tell us one thing you think you did get wrong. I mean, if there's that you regret.
When it comes with that entire sea level program?
Yeah, because it is one of the hallmarks of who you are.
I'll tell you.
But let me just inject.
Yeah, sure.
The current administration has suspended projects that were fast forwarded under your administration because they do think there needs to be more study. There is more pushback, and there are consequences. Businesses are flooding.
Well, I'm going to take offense to that, and I'm going to not agree to that, okay? Because the bottom line is that when you have certain buildings in commercial areas that are low-lying and you raise the roads, we were able to show that they would not flood with the proper pumps functioning correctly. But unfortunately, remember, it's not just a full public answer. You have to have commercial landowners and people to raise their first floors. It can't be just the public sector. You got to think to yourself, and look at neighborhoods like Alton Road or West Avenue or Sunset Harbor that used to be underwater. Those residents are now enjoying a dry community during king tides. So to say that, yes, could have there been certain businesses that were flooding? Yes. Did we course correct and be able to fix most of that? Yes. Were we able to work with FEMA to make sure that they were able to be insured and didn't get a basement rating? Yes, we did these things. But truly, when I look back and I say, okay, what would I do differently? I'll tell you what I would do differently. And this is in all honesty. I would be more patient with the process of dealing with you all, okay? Because what happens is that when you have someone like myself who wants to get things done, who's hard charging, who comes from the private sector, who sees a problem and understands that I can't wait, I've got to do this, I got a city that's drowning. I think what I would have done probably is engaged the press and the media more effectively, more patiently, and engaged you to understand our process as we were going along, so you'd be able to transmit out, I think, more information to the community
If I
going
could
forward.
just follow up on that, excuse me, Rick, because and we do want to talk about your engagement with the media, because there's been some friction there. But I want to talk about sort of as a lead. And when you're in private business, when you're running a company, you get to say, take that hill, and everybody follows you because that's their job. When you're in public life, you have citizens, you have a community, you have residents who have an opinion about this too. This is their community. So more than the regret about dealing with the media, what about how you dealt with the community? What did you think worked well there, and what could have worked better?
So when we dealt with the community, we were completely informational, always transmitting energy and information, to the community. Had so many outreach meetings you could possibly imagine. Matter of fact, when we made the decision that the only way we can spend or pay for this $500 million was to raise the stormwater fees, I went out there and communicated that to the community. I said, listen, folks, we have an opportunity and we have a challenge. We either invest $500 million and make sure that we don't become Atlantis, or we're going to become Atlantis. And I said, make the decision. And the people overwhelmingly came back and said, no, we need to do it. So we engaged consistently. But once again, let's be honest, because of the internet, because of social media, okay, if you have 5 residents that live on a road that's going to be raised, and they want to come out and just say, don't raise our road, don't raise our roads, what ends up happening is, truthfully, the media picks up on those 5 residents, and the next thing you know, you give the impression that 95% of the city doesn't want to be saved. And that's just not the case. And the only analogy you could use is, let's just say we're on a cruise ship together, and you have folks that are on a lower cabin level that their portholes are flooding with water, and they don't want new portholes. They just don't want new portholes. They like their portholes. But the rest of the people on the ship are saying, hey, you need to fortify those portholes because water's coming in. And guess what? We're all on the same ship together. And I think that in Miami Beach, we were kind of experiencing the same thing where, yes, you had a few people with leaky portholes that didn't want the portholes fixed. But the rest of the folks on board that ship don't want to sink. They don't want to drown. And I think the people of Florida feel the same way. They don't want to drown and they don't want to sink.
Let's stick with the environment a bit. I want to talk about the algae crisis particularly in the Treasure Coast and on the Southwest Florida coast. I guess one of your recent ads has you in a boat picking up a cup of basically the algae sludge. I think the question that folks have there is, though, how are we gonna finally move the needle here? There has been, everybody's come there and come to the communities and said, I feel your pain, and that's been going on for some years now, but they want to start seeing some results. And you mentioned that earlier, that's one of the things that is your hallmark. How will you move the needle on this particular issue finally?
Right. Well, it's funny because Nancy, you asked me that question at the debate last night. And you said, you got that hard charging style and you're so aggressive. How's that going to work with Republicans?
That's not how I phrased it.
But you know what I wanted to say that I didn't say is I got a funny feeling that may be a good prescription to work with the Republicans in Tallahassee. Somebody that actually knows how to get things done, who actually can move forward fast. And that's really, truly, like you said, something that I'm able to do.
Well, I was repeating
getting back to the overall picture of Lake Okeechobee, whether it's the red tide
reservoir,
or whether it's the blue-green algae, these are overall effects, I believe, to climate change, the heating of the planet. And whether it's Zika or whether it's the sea level rise or whether it's this incredible amount of blue algae, which, by the way, is starting to be worse and worse and worse. Now, we can talk about the nutrients, the nitrates going into Lake Okeechobee, which we know that's the reason why. But there is a bigger issue here, which is climate change. And I would have to say that after the work we did in Miami Beach, for me to receive the Officer in the Legion of Honor from the President of France for climate change, as well as the International Urban and Land Institute approval, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Something tells me we're doing something right, okay? And I can tell you that what we need to do when it comes to this issue is look at it from a macro level and a micro level. On a macro level, if I'm honored to be governor, we at the state of Florida are going to voluntarily comply with the Paris Climate Change Accords because we need to lead as opposed to be receiving the negative attributes of what's going on. We need to be a leader. Number two, I believe it starts with those water management boards right off the bat. I've looked at them. They're all made up of Governor Scott's cronies. I believe we need to put on folks that understand water management, whether it's scientists, ecologists, environmentalists. They're going to know a lot more about it than I do, that's for sure. I have learned a lot about what's going on in Lake Okeechobee through a tremendous amount of study. So we need to change the water management boards. Number two, I do understand that the Department of Environmental Protection has been savaged. I mean, the budget has been slashed, and it's no longer the Department of Environmental Protection, it's the Department of Environmental Exploitation. So we need to refund this department, and we need to make sure that we begin monitoring the lake, which we used to do 24/7 to understand what's going on in the water constantly. Number three, listen, we need regulation. I mean, the bottom line is that how we are going to allow the agricultural industry to keep putting these pollutants into the water unless it's regulated. We must regulate it. We need to invest in water treatment facilities. There are some new incredible treatment facilities and technology that we need to start investing in to make sure the water is treated before it goes into the lake. Now, we all agree that we need to make sure the reservoir gets done and gets done shallow and big. And I mean, that's a great point, but it's hard. And we're going to get it done, but it doesn't happen overnight. That's a big matter. That's the Hoover Dam. I mean, that's big stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so saying that it's going to happen overnight is not telling the truth. We need to push it forward and get it done. But I think that
do you think the state has been moving to? I'm sorry. Do you think the state has been basically slow walking this thing then?
Yes. Listen, bottom line is I became mayor. The streets are filling up with water. I hit the ground like we're under military invasion. I said to everybody, we got attacked. This is Pearl Harbor. We're going to move fast. And I assembled everyone together. If I'm governor, okay, Lake Okeechobee, I won't be able to sleep at night if this thing continues. My personality, I mean, I think you'd attest to that I'll be all over it. I mean, I will be there. I will figure this thing out. I will do whatever we have to do. We'll put everyone's feet to the fire. So the bottom line is Governor Scott really didn't care. It was just one of those things that happens every summer, and let it go, and we'll talk about it. And now I'm running for Senate, he says, and I've become a born-again environmentalist. Come on, the bottom line is if you want to fix something, you're all over it. You're in it. Your heart's in it. You can't sleep at night. You eat, sleep, and breathe it. Our governor doesn't feel that way. I ate, slept, and breathed sea level rise. I became a hydrologist, a meteorologist. Overnight, because it was my job. I was given the trust of the people. And right, wrong, or in the middle, I took action. And I don't care whether we look at Normandy invasion or we look at our Doolittle raid into Japan, okay? Bottom line is that we had to fight. We have to attack.
Well, one of the reasons that the three of us have the relationship we have is that we have created a collaboration to raise South Florida's voice, to create awareness and engagement on the issue of sea level rise. Because a lot of people don't know, the sea is supposed to raise 2 feet in 40 years. And big things need to be done down here. We're already looking at flood insurance costs that are going to be going up. Right. We know our South Florida is going to change. We have not, though, seen the issue of sea level rise on the agenda in Tallahassee. We even have the future Speaker of the Florida House, Jose Oliva. It's not on his agenda, and it's really an existential threat to South Florida. So I guess my 2 parts. What, if you were governor, where would you start? Sure. What is the one thing, if you're going to take that hill on sea level rise, not climate change, just on sea level rise? What are the big things that need to happen? And you would have a Republican legislature.
Sure.
How are you going to get a Republican legislature to follow you on an issue that they can see but they ignore?
Okay, first of all, I want to tell the Miami Herald, the Sun Sentinel, and the Palm Beach Post, welcome to the fight. So happy you've joined me, okay? Because I've been fighting this for years. And matter of fact, after my first term, I won, I think, 65% of the vote. So obviously the people of Miami Beach thought we were doing a good job and doing the right thing. So the bottom line is this. What we did in Miami Beach doesn't work everywhere across the state of Florida. One size does not fit all. I've traveled the state. I understand the effects of sea level rise, and it's different in different places. So for example, in Jacksonville, where the St. Johns River overflows, that's different than what we're experiencing here in Miami Beach. Sea level rise itself is something that we need to attack on a local level with state help. We need a Chief Environmental Resiliency Officer out of Tallahassee, the first of its kind. We did it in Miami Beach. We need a person at the highest level has experience in that position. We need regional environmental resiliency officers because, like I said, one size does not fit all. We need to create a resiliency fund. And this fund is not a fund that necessarily pays for everyone's resiliency efforts, but it's a fund that can help begin seed capital to start with grants to motivate local communities to create a level of resiliency where they are threatened by sea level rise, which we know.
Would this fund be, would the money come from general revenue of the state?
Well, I can go through all the different ways we can raise revenue, and my God, there's so many great ways we can do it without raising taxes. But one of the most important things is we have a fee called impact fees. And the reason they call it impact fees is because if you're going to develop 3 or 4 or 500 or 2,000 apartments or homes, you should pay an impact fee based on the impact that you are creating. And that impact fee should also be going towards the resiliency efforts that we need to ensure against and make sure that we are fortifying ourselves.
So that would be on new development. Just
Well,
another
right,
idea
right.
that
And then we have
for
another-
raising money.
A number of other issues we need to talk about.
Oh, sure, absolutely. But bottom line is this, is that we need to offer expertise as well to local communities that don't understand how to create a level of resiliency for sea level rise. And I think that once we make it a focus, listen, speed of the leader term is rate of the pack. Folks thought we could never do this on Miami Beach because for years before I became mayor, it was analysis paralysis and it was consultants hiring consultants hiring consultants. The one thing you all know in South Florida, if I become governor, there's going to be action. Okay, and it's going to happen fast.
And how would you get the legislature to go along with you?
Well, let's have it. Listen, I know Jose Oliva pretty well, and I always tell Jose, if you'll be speaker, if I'm honored to be governor, I know you're not going to get what you want, and I may not get everything I want, but we're going to get what we need to be able to move forward. I've built my life working with Republicans and Democrats. I never built my companies with somehow saying, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? I never did that, okay? But when you explain to people the economic benefits of sea level rise prevention, once they understand that if we are not able to fortify our cities and our coasts, that the next thing you know, you go into a death spiral. Insurers won't insure, finance companies won't finance, and by the way, that's not good for business. And I've never met a Republican that's not pro-business. So I think it's taking the complicated, making it simple, and explaining that this is not about whether it's climate change or brought about by humans, who cares? This is about fortifying our state so that we actually can continue to grow. No companies want to come to Florida and invest like Amazon if we're not investing in ourselves. Why would they go invest $1 billion or $5 billion and employ 50,000 people if we don't believe that we're being threatened by sea level rise? So I think that...
Okay, Nancy?
Sure.
Last night, the issue of income inequality came up, and I wanted to know if you could do a deeper dive. South Florida, specifically the community in which we both live, South Florida, and we all live, has just a huge gap between the well-off and the not doing very well at all, low-wage
Yes.
workers. Can you do a deeper dive and
Sure.
specifically address how, as the state's economy grows, as you say you want to
Yes.
happen, how people who are on the lowest ends of the scale will benefit also?
Nancy, let me go through that and explain first of all. Number one, as you know, in Miami Beach, we work with the business community and our commission, and we've passed the first minimum living wage in the history of the state of Florida. Unfortunately, Governor Scott didn't agree with us, nor the Retail Federation, and they sued us. Even though we believe that we have the right, based on a 2004 referendum that passed, saying local communities should have their ability to set their own minimum wage. We're going to take that all the way to Florida Supreme Court, but we did it. And the bottom line is we need to do it statewide. We cannot continue to allow companies to underpay their people and our taxpayers pay the difference, because that's what's really going on. If someone can't live on $8.25 an hour, which we know they can't, how are they living? They're living based on social services. They're based on taxpayers paying for this. I don't understand why any Republicans would want to subsidize someone else's business. I mean, you always talk about this McDonald's, and someone will say, well, how are they going to survive? I said, well, listen, let me tell you about that little McDonald's. There's 180 of them. It's owned by a private equity group out of Chicago, and they love Florida because Florida's subsidizing their business. But Floridians shouldn't love it. They should be paying a fair living wage, which I believe it could be $13, $14, $15 an hour, wherever we can get it, and then let the local communities set it. The way that we can create a 21st century economy where folks can get jobs that actually pay a living wage is not a simple solution overnight. It is a long-term solution, but it has to do with everything from investing in education, paying our teachers a nationally competitive salary, making sure at our high schools you can't graduate unless you either go into college or unless you're going into the military or you have gone through a career technical education program where we will teach you how to be a welder, how to be an air conditioning repair person.
But aren't we already doing that? We've been
not
talking
to the
about...
not to the level, Rosie, we need to do it. Because the bottom line is that we're spending more money to incarcerate people than we are to educate them. And we need to change that going forward. I believe we have people that, and we see it all over the state, you can't even afford to live. I mean, we understand it. I mean, the affordable housing crisis is huge in Florida. I mean, you've all seen that movie, The Florida Project. I mean, they filmed it in Orlando for a reason. That's the heartbeat of what's going on.
There's a concern about the minimum wage that it's not going to be the cure-all that many candidates seem to think. Once you raise the minimum wage, there are many, many people who will then lose the benefits that they have been getting, whether it's SNAP, food stamps, whatever. And no matter how high you raise that minimum wage, it's not going to fill in that gap. And so that there are a number of people who stand to actually regress if the minimum wage is
So Nancy,
raised.
there's not one simple solution. Minimum wage is one. Making sure we insure everybody across the state of Florida with health insurance so they are terrified to go to sleep at night where they wake up thinking they're going to be sick. That we absolutely have them under better, stronger education programs and career technical education, that our teachers are being paid a fair salary, that they can get to work with public transportation and don't have to spend 2 hours in traffic. I mean, there are multiple things that we need to do at once. Listen, the bottom line is we've had a governor who believes that an economic vision for Florida is a state of Walmarts, McDonald's, and Applebee's. And that's just his vision, okay? That's not my vision. My vision is a state of Lockheed's, Boeing, eBay's, and Apple's, and we turn NASA into our Silicon Valley. But like the state that I came from as a boy called Massachusetts, it doesn't happen by becoming the cheapest state in the country. It doesn't happen by saying we got great weather and low wages, because Massachusetts has bad weather. Okay, but the bottom line is that it really starts with education, and that's what we need to do. And I believe that if I'm honored to be governor, the one thing you know about me is I get things done.
When you say start with education, are you drawing a line between, I guess, or a line between better educated workforce means that you'll get those employers that you're talking about? Is that what you?
It's a combination of two. When I was up in NASA, for example, and meeting with all the private space companies that are involved, what they're saying to me is they can't find the graduates. They can't find folks that have the skill set. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they graduated college and they're ready to go work for Lockheed. They need folks that are welders, that are electricians. They can't find them. And we need to supply them. But that starts in high school. When we were kids, we had shop, we had home ec, we had learn how to balance a checkbook. This all went away. We got to stop the testing and start investing in our schools. That's something we know we need to do. It all starts with education. I really believe it in my heart of hearts. That's what we have to do. And that's what I'll do as governor.
When you say test, I'm sorry,
That's
when you
okay.
say we have to stop the testing, what do you mean by that? Do you want to eliminate
Right.
standardized testing from the schools? Do you want to curtail it? What's your vision for that?
So when I was in high school in Hollywood, and I went to Hollywood Hills High, that's where I graduated. I had a teacher by the name of Mr. Wilson, who retired, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, John Wilson, American history teacher. And Mr. Wilson, he inspired us. He excited us. He got me excited in American history. He taught me to read this magazine called Time Magazine I never heard of before. But that's how I think that we need to teach. But what do we do as far as an evaluation system? I believe let's empower teachers, master teachers, teachers that are so respected by their peers to program a evaluation program that we're able to understand what our schools are doing and not doing. Because how can you take a kid, spend all this time testing him for math and science when this person's into fashion and art? Why? Why are you pulling him in this direction? Why are you not inspiring him for fashion and art? Or maybe this person wants to be a welder. Why are we taking all our emphasis on the pressure on these teachers, not to teach and inspire, but just teach to a test? It's not the way to go. And by the way, I meet teachers everywhere. They're universally against this. And you have the Department of Education is made up of bureaucrats, not teachers. And I think that's wrong.
I was asking about the education issue, and so are we talking about more money on the higher education, the higher ed level as well, and putting more funds into schools, or are we? Because you mentioned about paying teachers better.
Sure.
But overall, are we funding education at the level that needs to be funded, and what would you do about that?
All right. So let me answer that
Because
question.
you'll be dealing with a GOP leadership that
That's okay.
hasn't been moving in that direction.
Hey, the one thing you all know is I'm a pretty tough guy. I get things done, okay? I don't care if it's GOP, I don't care who it is, okay? If we need to, we will take it to the people of Florida via ballot referendum. We will use the power of the people, because the people in Florida want change right now. And I'm a pretty persuasive person, and the executive authority of the governor is pretty strong. And they may control the House, and maybe they even control the Senate, but I'll control the executive branch. And we will figure out a way to work together to move forward if I'm honored to be governor. But let's answer your question. Bottom line is this. Number one, we need teachers to make a minimum of $10,000 more per year to bring them up to the national average. Number two, I really believe in my heart that the whole charter school business has become this incredible cottage industry. All of a sudden, you got these folks up there in Tallahassee, they're born-again charter people out of nowhere. My God, they have just seen the light. But then, of course, you look a little deeper and you find this one's husband or this one's wife or this one's brother is a lawyer, this one's works for the charter school, this one's a consultant for the charter school. Come on. It's legalized corruption. We know what's going on. They're taking the money, and they're all getting paid, and they're taking the money out of public schools and putting it into these private schools that aren't even regulated properly. To me, I went to public school my whole life in Florida. Bottom line is we can do this right if you invest in it. How is it a school gets an F and you don't fund them? To me, F means funding. If a school's not doing well, put more money into it. In business, if you got a unit that's not doing well, you don't starve it, you actually invest in it. So the whole logic is wrong. It's all contrived in order to drive more money to these charter schools. I also believe that we need to put money into CTE, career technical education, like I mentioned earlier, so folks get trained for a career. And then when it comes to safety, we cannot mix these two up. They have nothing to do with each other. Yes, we must invest in safety schools, and I have a plan with the Education Security Administration, ESA, similar to what we have with the TSA, and we must fund it, but it can't in any way have anything to do with the education budget or anything to do with what we're paying our teachers. When it comes to our universities and colleges, we know colleges and universities are modern day oil wells of innovation. This is where we create opportunities. You look at Boston. Why is every great company there? Why is the biotech companies there? Why are all the high-tech companies there? Why did GE move the world headquarters there? Not because they bribed their way into becoming a 21st century economy, because they have the best colleges and universities. These modern day innovation oil wells are pumping people out with great ideas. So we need to invest in our colleges. But I also believe, and I'm a firm believer, that if you can't afford to go to college in Florida, your parents can't afford to send you, we should provide a program that you can go debt-free. If you agree to stay in our state for a certain amount of years to work in our state. And that to me is a talent retention program. It solves two problems. We don't know who the next Einstein's going to be, but we need to provide that opportunity going forward. Listen, we have to invest. It's not about spending, it's about investing. And it depends how much time you have for me. I could tell you how we're going to get the money. Okay?
Go ahead.
Boy, there's so many things. I heard you talk about a ESA, and
Yep.
I'm wondering, are you going to grow the size of government? Even though the budget grew by $6 billion this year. But really what I want to ask you about is the campaign.
Sure.
Because at this point in the process, what you hear is it's a three-person race, really. The polls are showing, Gwen Graham, yourself, and Jeff Green at the top. And when we look at the field, we see 5 good candidates.
Sure.
So what I would like to know is, how do you see the difference between the candidates? Because there are different variations, shades of gray, but pretty much you guys are not that far different from one another. How do you assess the differences between the candidates? And really, given how much money it costs to win election in Florida, who's best positioned to win?
Right.
And if you can touch on, because Democrats have not won in 20 years, the governor's office, and oftentimes we see these people with a lot of money come in and, invest $73 million. We heard Mr. Green last night say he's willing to spend up to $200 million. Mm-hmm. And you think, wow, with that kind of money, maybe he really could pull this off. And so your assessment of the difference between the candidates and the state of the campaign today.
Rosemary, we have 14 offices across the state of Florida. Because the one thing we know is that you can't win an election by TV alone, by direct mail alone, or by social media alone. You have to have people on the ground that believe and that create a movement. And we believe that we've created a movement on the ground. And we believe that our turnout model is incredibly strong, and that will, and with other things, carry the day for us on the 28th. That said, as far as the Democratic nominee, whoever that may be, I hope it's me, the national money that's committed to this race is unprecedented. It's not going to require anyone's personal wealth come August 29th to win the Democratic governorship of Florida. It's going to require a great candidate because the money that's already committed is unprecedented. Why? Because this race is a race for the soul of the nation. Folks know in the Democratic Party, as well as independents and very moderate Republicans, understand that so goes Florida in the governor's race this year, so goes the presidency in 2020.
Why do you say that?
Well, because not only the fact that the governor has a tremendous ability to move the electorate for the presidency, we also know that it's the most important swing state in the entire country. And I also think that whichever Democrat that can come up with a message that takes a purple state like Florida and allows it to go to the Democratic column, even if it's a very dark shade of blue, that message obviously is something that will resonate nationwide. And right now what the Democrats need is a message that will resonate nationwide. And unfortunately, it's going to come from one of these states. I believe it's going to come from us, from our campaign. And my message is pretty clear. I am pro-people, and I am pro-economic development. I believe what President Kennedy said, a rising tide lifts all ships. And there's nothing wrong by being a Democrat and understanding the value of the free enterprise world to raise everyone's standard of living. And
do you expect to put more money in this race? You've spent 23 million, is that about right?
No, way less.
Okay.
No, we've raised half that.
Okay.
We've raised it. That's probably right, Rosie, with half of it from me and half of it we've raised.
Okay,
And
so you've put in about how much?
11 or 12, I think, yeah.
And are you, so you heard Mr. Green last night.
Sure.
Are you also, you're helping finance your campaign, are
Sure.
you committing to putting more money into?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Like how much?
Yeah, but it doesn't come down to how much. Because like I said before, once we win the actual Democratic primary, it doesn't require an individual candidate.
But why
to
didn't it work that way before? We've seen Alex Singh,
Well, hold on. Let me answer that question. That's a very good. That's a very good
Bill
question.
McBride,
That's a
or
very
Jim
good.
Davis.
Let me answer that question. Okay, the 4 Democratic nominees for governor all share something in common. They all lost. Okay, now you have to ask yourself, why did they lose? Did they lose specifically because they didn't have enough money? No, that's not why they lost. I mean, we could say that Rick Scott pumped in $10–14 million at the end. That's not why they lost, because Secretary Clinton had more money than Donald Trump by far, and she lost the election, unfortunately. But the one thing that we always hear from the 4 Democratic nominees who lost, why did you lose? And you know what they all seem to say? I didn't get enough turnout from South Florida. Really? You mean where all the people live? Where all the Democrats live? The bottom line is that I believe that South Florida will be the key to this race going forward. And I think that's going to be very, very strong and very, very important. Combined with somebody that I think authenticity is crucial. I think somebody that's shown that not only they made it in the private sector, but they've made it in the public sector. Because the one thing that we know is we don't want to elect somebody that's gone right from the private sector, right to the top job. We don't want to be an experiment. We watch that right now with the president. We don't need to see that again. And I believe my candidacy brings someone who's made it from nothing in the private sector, but has also been a proven successful 2-term mayor. People know what to expect.
You know, all 5 candidates last night said that they would stand up to Donald Trump, speaking of the person who went from the private sector to the top job in the public sector. That's easy to say.
Sure.
However, whoever wins is a governor. Mm-hmm. If it's a Democratic governor, that means Florida has a governor from the wrong party in this administration's eyes. As it pertains to looking out for Floridians' best interests, what does standing up to Trump look like to you?
Thank you, Nancy. Great question. First of all, one of my opponents, as you know, spent a lot of money saying he's going to stand up to Donald Trump. When you look at his record and what he said after the election, where he basically said Donald Trump's a great guy, and he also said that he'd be delighted to have him as an alternative to Hillary Clinton for 2 terms.
You're talking about Jeff Green.
Of course. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is that that's not how you stand up to Donald Trump. That's going to be used against you forever. But the bottom line is that what I did for Secretary Clinton is I spent 18 months of my life. I was on national television, on every channel you could imagine, fighting for Hillary Clinton and fighting against Donald Trump. Because I knew what Donald Trump was about. I knew exactly what type of president he would be, which is horrible, which is a national nightmare. I fought against Donald Trump. I had my Twitter blowing up nonstop with threats and curses from people all over the country.
That was a campaign.
Right.
But you're in the governor's mansion now.
Sure.
And Florida, say, is under threat environmentally from the feds or health care issues. What does standing up?
So Nancy, the bottom line is that this president, when it comes to environmental or climate change issues or helping people that can't help themselves, will be nowhere to be found. I don't care if it's a Republican governor of Florida or it's a Democratic governor of Florida. The one thing we know about Donald Trump, my God, I mean, what he says is not what he does, not what he means, okay? He's been that way in business his entire life. No one does business with him because he's radioactive. Bottom line, his best deal he ever did was being born, okay? So what I'm saying to you, it's not a matter of Republican or Democrat. It's a matter of taking charge and doing everything we can to help the state of Florida. The one thing I'm very proud about with my campaign, our candidacy, is that we have tremendous moderate Republican support. If you look at some of the donors to the campaign, they're some of the greatest entrepreneurs around that are Republican. And they're donating because they're not happy with the national narrative. They understand this is not the American way. They look at me as somebody that understands that you don't need to be left and you don't need to be right. You need to be forward. And that's what our campaign is about. And that's why I'm honored to have a significant amount of Republican support. And I believe if I'm honored to be governor, that support's going to swell on the Republican side.
Let me just do one follow-up on that.
Yes.
Representative Graham's campaign says on the donations that from average Floridians, they have gotten more donations from average Floridians than the other candidates combined. And that's a reflection of the reach that she has in the Democratic Party. So when you talk about some of the donations, you mentioned moderate Republicans. It seems that if her donations are a reflection of how this race is breaking, and the polls show that she's still in the lead. Talk about that.
Yeah, Rosemary, you know what? We've got thousands of donations from Floridians, so I don't know how to compare the two, but I know that the amount of online donations we have are pretty significant and pretty tremendous. And I'm not sure that's a way to judge specifically, what kind of support you have necessarily. We have a tremendous amount of ability, and we've raised funds from people that we're very proud of. Whether it's Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook.
Maybe I'm asking
Sure.
you, can you contrast, because she's in the lead, she's leading the polls, can you contrast yourself?
Well, I think this, when I entered the race, everyone said I got no shot. And next thing you know, we've soared up to the top. I'm not going to comment on Gwen. The bottom line is that she came in with a big brand name, and I came in with no name. And but I think what America is about is it's about new, fresh innovation. I know that the folks at BlackBerry still convinced they got a great brand, but I'm not sure the folks at Apple agree with them. Okay, so we're selling an iPhone 10. We're not selling a BlackBerry.
I was going to move on to a good subject here, I think, in terms of Medicaid expansion.
Yes.
I think there's still somewhere around 700,000, 800,000 Floridians who are falling in this gap here that are not covered in terms of health care insurance and access to it. Well, first of all, will you go ahead and accept the Medicaid expansion being asked by the federal, being offered by the federal government, and how do you convince the Republican legislature to go along with you on this?
So the answer is absolutely yes. We will accept, we will demand Medicaid expansion, as much money as we possibly can. The bottom line is, when you accept the money, we will save the state of Florida $500 million a year. So what I can't quite understand as a Republican that likes business and likes budget efficiency, why in the world wouldn't you accept it? I mean, it's not like you save $500 million. So we will convince them to do so. But also the feeling is this: if I am unable,
but the business community has already tried pushing them to accept this. What's going to be your
Well,
argument?
I'll tell you the difference is, okay?
Because as a businessman, you just made the argument.
Sure.
I can understand why any business wouldn't want to save themselves $500 million. Well,
I'm going to explain it two ways to you, okay? And we're going to change the rule book. All right. Number one, the one thing that I will do and will be very happy to do is take it to the people of Florida. Any of these issues through a budget, through a referendum, ballot referendum. The people of Florida are going to say absolutely yes. But number two, too long we have a situation where someone gets in office and their entire marketing, media, messaging machine, they just give it away after they get into office. If I'm honored to be governor, that massive marketing messaging machine that we've created out of Miami, out of Wynwood, we call it Southern Command, Southcom, that's not only going to get stronger, it's going to get bigger. And if I'm governor, when it's talking about Medicaid or we're talking about $10,000 raise for teachers, we will take that message to the people of Florida. And we will go right to that senator or that legislator from Lakeland who doesn't feel that teachers should get a fair salary. And we will make sure every one of their constituents understand his position or her position on this. So we're not going to sit back and just somehow passively try to convince folks. We are going to utilize 21st century technology and media to be able to get our message across. And that comes to another point. I know that in the last 8 years, the media has had a horrible relationship with the existing governor. No matter, he doesn't interview with anybody, he doesn't open up his door. The one thing I think we'd all agree is I keep pretty open door. Yeah, we've had our beginning issues, but my God, we say yes to everybody. We let everyone interview. We answer every question. There's nothing we won't talk about. If I'm honored to be governor, the media will have a seat at the table. The media will be able to have complete insight and ability to interact with the governor, which they haven't had for so many years. They'll have that with me because I'm going to count on the media to help get our message out. That's going to be crucial going forward.
I just want to follow up on what you just said. Are you saying that if you're elected, you would keep the operation in Wynwood or some version of that as a marketing machine? And who would pay for that?
Well, I think I'll pay for it myself, okay? However I
Because
have
we
to
got
do
the
it.
president who does Twitter.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
I think we're going to be a little stronger than Twitter, okay?
He's pretty strong
But
on that Twitter.
I can tell you that we're going to keep that in place, and I'm going to rely on the media who has not had access to this governor for 8 years. And the one thing I know for the folks in South Florida, from your 3 newspapers, if they want to fix public transportation, if they want attention of South Florida like they haven't got, I got a great idea. Go elect a governor from South Florida. That should help a little bit.
Talk about how you dealt with the Miami-Dade delegation and the legislature when you needed to lobby for, or on behalf of Miami Beach or Miami, South Florida. Can you talk about how
Sure.
you dealt with your relationship with specific legislators in working on our behalf?
Sure.
And this is, again, a Republican
Yeah.
majority legislature.
Nancy, I found that unfortunately, and we have some great representatives up there, it was challenging for them to get anything done. They seem to not have the ability to move. And if they did, we'd all be on wonderful trains and all kinds of great public transportation in South Florida. By now, we would have already had great funding for environmental resiliency. We would have already had smart traffic systems in place. We don't have anything like that. So when someone asks, well, what do you have to show for it? South Florida? I would say absolutely nothing. Nothing I can think of. So I think that as governor, they're going to get a lot more done for South Florida if I'm governor. It doesn't make a difference if you're Republican or Democrat. We will, for the first time ever, be able to help, obviously, the entire state, but I think South Florida has been very neglected.
Did you have a relationship with state legislators?
Oh, sure. David
from South
Richardson
Florida?
was
Okay.
fantastic. David was great. We worked with David and a bunch of them. We did, always. You know, I mean, we got a lot of them that are great right now. But I think that I think the issue was they had to challenge themselves. They couldn't get anything done. And this whole thing of hiring, local communities, hiring lobbying groups, I think it's ridiculous. I mean, we did it for the first time, then I was against it right afterwards because they can't do anything. And I think you're wasting taxpayer money. Why should a local government have to pay a lobbying firm? I mean, what do you have these representatives for? Why are we paying them?
Talk about Tallahassee and how the Florida legislature works. How do you? I find it frustrating. But when you look at Tallahassee and how the leadership, not just the governor's office, but just the whole leadership of state government.
This is the issue. We're at a crossroads. We have those that say we should become a 21st century economy, and we have those that say, no, let's go backwards and let's stay where we are. The problem with becoming a 21st century economy is that you can't do it with a 20th century governing mentality. What we're seeing today, and it's fascinating, we're seeing the private sector, the most admired companies in America, that are all going forward. When you look at their HR manuals, they're pro-education, they're pro-healthcare, they're pro-environment, they're anti-discrimination. Matter of fact, if they're going to operate anywhere, they want great public transportation. And then you have a government like in Tallahassee that doesn't understand that, and they're going the opposite direction. And you're seeing a great divide. And then we ask ourselves, well, why aren't we a 21st century economy? Because we're being governed by a 20th century mentality. Speed of the leader determines the rate of the pack. I believe that in my heart. I don't care.
But he just announced I guess that was at a national. Jobs are up, that Florida's doing well by the metrics.
We understand.
3.8%
The
unemployment.
the governor's job program, which he's put in place, a lot of it has to do with the incredible economic policies that President Obama put in place. The bottom line is that President Obama inherited the worst economy in American history during the Great Depression. I mean, literally, it was the worst, Great Recession. And he was able to pull it out. And what we are seeing today are the results of those efforts. He felt it in the second term, but we're seeing it now. What Governor Scott has created is low-paying jobs. It's not that hard to pay low-paying jobs. If you want to stay to Walmart's and McDonald's and Applebee's, how hard can that be? He would advertise in California on radio saying, come to Florida, got great weather, we got low wages, and by the way, the taxes are low too. I went on radio, I said, you know what, that's not the reason to come to Florida. Come to Florida because we got great people, we got education that's getting better. In other words, why sell ourselves so cheap? Why be in a commodity race? That's not where we want to be. So, has he created jobs? Yes, but unfortunately, you got to have 3 of them in order to live. That's not what becoming a 21st century economy is about.
Last night, the issue of criminal justice, especially as it pertains to African-American Floridians, came up. Can you talk about how you would address, and again, do a deeper dive
Sure.
into issues of police bias and brutality,
Yep.
criminal justice? I think you're already on the record as far as stand your ground is concerned. So could you talk
Sure,
about
Nancy,
those
yeah.
other issues?
Yeah, stand your ground, obviously, it's a license to kill. We need to repeal it. I think most of us agree with that. Number 2, I'm a strong believer that we got to get rid of these private prisons. We don't need to incentivize companies to lock people up. Number 3, I truly believe that we need to make sure folks that have paid their debt to society, felons, are given the right to vote again. I think that's part of the culture of our state, our country. It's a state and a country of second chances. And if we want to rehabilitate people, why are we penalizing them, making them feel like they don't have their full ability to operate and function as human beings? So on those areas, I'm completely very strong about. We have a great opportunity, God willing, to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. But we're going to end up in a constitutional fight and a showdown going forward. If I'm honored to be governor, I believe it's my right to appoint those 3 judges, and I will fight like you've seen me fight. I will fight like no one else could fight, because I'm going to make sure that we have fair, equitable, knowledgeable judges with extreme integrity that understand that every Floridian should have their right to see a courtroom for their last bastion of justice going forward. But when it comes to police brutality, once again, it's not what you say you're going to do. Look at what someone's done. And as you know, I inherited a police department in Miami Beach where the tail was wagging the dog. My God, I mean, before I became mayor, an African-American male was shot over 100 and something times in his car. It made national and international headlines for all the wrong reasons. And I campaigned and I said, if I'm honored to be governor, I'll reform this police department. Now, you know, when I said that, I didn't get the police endorsement, and you know that the police did everything in their power to fight against me becoming mayor, but I won in a landslide. And one of the first things I did with Jimmy is we went out and did a national search for a police chief. And we found Dan Oates, who, of course, President Obama said one of the greatest police chiefs in America. He was the chief out in Aurora, Colorado during the horrible Batman shooting. We brought Dan to Miami Beach. We also recruited Loretta Hill, who became the deputy chief, who's an African-American woman, became the highest-ranking African-American woman in the history of our police department. We changed our majors. We changed our captains. We put cameras on our police before Ferguson. That's important. We didn't wait for Ferguson. We did it before. And by the way, they were kicking and screaming the whole time. And I was the mayor. And you can imagine the backlash. It's not fun. We actually changed the entire protocol for the use of force. Matter of fact, we put a policy together with Dade County that said if there is a homicide involving one of our police officers, we will no longer have our internal affairs investigated. It goes right to Dade County. They will investigate our police. So to answer that question, it's not what I say I'm going to do. It's what I already did. That shows people what I will do in the future.
If you don't win, will you commit to supporting whoever is the Democratic nominee and perhaps put financial resources behind?
100%, Rosemary. I think this is the most important election in our state and our country's ever faced. And I truly, truly will be behind whoever wins. But I also believe, like the last 4 Democratic nominees that lost, by God, I hate to throw good money at bad, okay? I've watched this movie before, and I believe in my heart of hearts, and I think people saw it at that debate, that I'm the right person that will take on Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, and I will win, and I will win.
Okay, well, we've reached the end of our You know, it wasn't too bad. Was it too bad?
Fantastic. I go on forever.
Okay.
Well, you can chat for 3 more minutes.
Yeah,
Whatever
well,
you
I'm
want.
going to actually give him his 3 minutes.
Sure.
You know, I thank you for coming in, being our first person here today. Like I said, we invited the candidates in the Republican primary to join us as well for conversation.
They don't
But
like you newspapers,
yeah,
huh?
I know. They don't. Yeah, no, they can't get
they're
them to
waiting
call
for you.
back. So if sorry about that. What I would like you to do
Sure.
is spend the last 3 minutes
Sure.
looking into that
Okay.
camera right there
Happy.
and telling people what's at stake and why you're the right guy.
Right. Thank you. I believe this is the most important election, not only in our state, but in the world. So goes Florida this year, so goes the presidency in 2020. As I've said before, this is Normandy for the Democratic Party, and we must win. We can't afford to lose. We have to get this right. I'm somebody that started from nothing. I'm the son of a single mom, second person in my family to graduate college, and I'm a proud product of the Florida public schools. I started from nothing, and I built a little company that grew. I sold it, and I became a 2-term mayor of Miami Beach, where I got things done, where I reformed the police department, where I raised the minimum living wage, although the governor stopped us, where I actually had the highest LGBTQ scores in the history of the state of Florida, where we actually built a convention center on time and on budget after so many years of it never happening, where truly we fought back sea level rise and became a leader in the fight against climate change. If I'm honored to be your Democratic nominee, I believe that I will lead us to victory, that we will turn our state blue, and in the process, we will turn our nation blue. People today want somebody that doesn't talk about what they're going to do. It's more about what you've done. And I believe that the track record speaks for itself. I have fought Donald Trump on behalf of Secretary Clinton for 18 months of my life. And if I'm honored to be governor, I will make sure that we will fight not only Donald Trump, but we will fight his little mini-me, Rick DeSantis, and we will win the governor's race this year. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Levine. It was a pleasure visiting with you today. And thank you to our online audience for tuning in. And we've got a full day ahead of us, starting next at noon with businessman Jeff Green. So again, thanks again. Good to see you, and
Thank you
best
so
of luck
much.
to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it all. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You bet.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
You guys do it all day? Oh my God.
Yeah, we're doing 5.
You're going to be exhausted.